Hi, welcome back to the final micro-learning video on program evaluation. So we've talked about why program evaluation is important and the difference between outputs and outcomes. So let's talk about how program evaluation logistically happens within an organization. So this is how I've seen it best work, but I would love to hear if you've worked it some other way in your organization. But this is what I would recommend is first to identify who needs to be involved in this conversation around program evaluation. The obvious answer is obviously your program staff, right? Whoever is running the program. But that's not it. The fundraising staff or your grant writer also should be involved because they are communicating with funders, right? If you have someone else on staff who has program evaluation knowledge or background, if they should be also incorporated because they bring some outside expertise. If you have a business manager who helps with, say, grant reports, it would also be helpful to bring them in, even if it's just so that everyone's on the same page, okay? It's important to have a meeting where you determine the timeline. So program start and end dates. So this is happening all before your program gets off the ground, okay? Program start and end dates. You want to put in enough time to follow up on incomplete surveys that you might be doing at the end of the program, and to also lay out when you might have grant reporting deadlines, so interim reports or final reports, okay? Then you want to lay out your evaluation design. So you'll define your outcomes, because remember that's really what we're evaluating here, not your outputs, not how many kids you're going to serve in your after school program, but what are the impacts of the after school program. Okay, so you're going to define those, write those down, and then you're going to define what measurements will be used to actually measure those outcomes. Okay, then you're going to create those program evaluation tools. So you're going to be measuring those outcomes, but how are you measuring those outcomes? So are you using surveys? And if you're using surveys, are you doing both parent surveys and participant surveys? Are you using pre and post tests? If you are, for example, a tutoring program after school, are you able to access grades before they start in your tutoring program and then after? Because that would show, more of a direct connection of the impact of your tutoring program if they're not getting any other help outside of your tutoring program. You might want to look at attendance or behavior. There are other impacts, other outcomes from your program than maybe just the academics, right? But pre and post test, if you're trying to train someone on a specific skill, you might give them the same test beforehand. You run them through your 2 or 3 month program, and then you give them the same test at the end. And you can see their knowledge growth, right? That's a really good pre and post test, okay? So you're going to create those program evaluation tools. You're going to consider how you will collect and analyze the data. So who is actually collecting that data and analyzing it, in what form? So if you're doing paper forms, that's a lot of work. So can you digitize it? There's plenty of software out there, low cost or open source software, but someone might need to be trained on it. Can you bring on an intern to help you? And then what is the best way to display or communicate results, right? So thinking through all of the evaluation design and processes before you even begin your program, right? And especially if this is a new program, or before you are pitching to a funder, you might want to sit down and do this before you even submit that grant request, right? Because you can work that evaluation design into your request. Okay, so you go through, say, your summer program, you implement your new program evaluation. You're going to have a debriefing meeting with all those people that you previously brought together, because you need to close the feedback loop. So what did we learn? What did our program evaluation tell us? What can we do better? What worked? What didn't work in the evaluation design, right? But we want to also incorporate the evaluation back into that program, right? So that's how I would consider working, incorporating program evaluation in a more comprehensive way into a program. But certainly leave us some comments, or shoot us an email at our brain email, because we'd love to hear how you're using program evaluation in your organization, and if you're having any particular struggles that we can hopefully address in a future microlearning video or blog post. So thank you for joining us, and be in touch.